Tell me something.
He threw me on the bed.
I just want my daughter back. Please bring her back.
And then I was screaming my brains out.
I heard her say a man was coming after her with a knife, and she said, oh my God, here he comes.
He started kissing me.
Our biggest concern is that we find this child, well and safe.
My hand hit a nail.
The last time I seen her was when she was walking towards the machine. I started getting scared.
Kidnapped and locked in a dark and cramped underground dungeon, Katie was subjected to unspeakable horrors that no child should ever endure. On 28 December 1992, 9 years, Katie 𝐉𝐻𝐈 was betrayed by a trusted family friend, John Esposito. He lured Katie into his clutches and held her captive for 17 days. But even in the depths of despair, Katie's spirit refused to be broken. Her story is one of courage, resilience, and the unbreakable human will to survive. We're traveling back in time to the year 1992, where a young girl named Katie 𝐉𝐻𝐈 of Bayshore, New York, was just days away from celebrating her 10th birthday. But little did she know, she was about to embark on a journey that no child should ever have to endure. One day, Katie was lured into the home of her neighbor and family friend, John Esposito. Sounds innocent enough, right? Wrong. This was no ordinary visit to a friend's house. John had something much more sinister planned for poor little Katie. He had built an underground bunker that was custom made for one thing and one thing only: to imprison and abuse Katie for 17 whole days. Can you even imagine the terror and trauma that this poor child had to endure? It's enough to make your blood boil and your heart ache. And if that wasn't enough, John even had the audacity to tell Katie that she would spend the rest of her life trapped in that horrific dungeon as his prisoner. Can you believe the nerve of this guy? But thankfully, Katie was eventually rescued and freed from her torment. It's a miracle that she survived such a horrific ordeal, but her strength and bravery are an inspiration to us all. Let's all take a moment to send some love and light to Katie, and to all survivors of abuse and trauma. Katie 𝐉𝐻𝐈's nightmare ended abruptly when her captor, Esposito, finally fessed up and she was rescued. Talk about a plot twist. But wait, there's more. You see, Katie's newfound freedom also meant that she was set free from her own family, who had been treating her like a punch bag since she was barely old enough to walk. It's like she escaped from one prison only to find herself trapped in another. Who knew that life could be this crazy? However, Katie's story is a remarkable one of resilience and perseverance as she embarked on an incredible journey from darkness to light. It all started with Katie's childhood, which was far from the happy-go-lucky existence most of us dream of. Growing up on Long Island with her neglectful mother, Marilyn, and her older half-brother, John, Katie was used to being left alone for hours on end. Her only solace was found in the care of her godmother, Linda 𝐉𝐻𝐈, and her husband, Sal. But little did she know that her life was about to take a turn for the worse. Enter her kidnapper, a man by the name of Esposito. He snatched Katie when she was 9 years old and imprisoned her in a dark underground dungeon for a shocking 17 days. Can you imagine? But thankfully, Esposito eventually confessed to his heinous crime, and Katie was rescued from her hellish captivity. Yet, even with her newfound freedom, Katie's troubles were far from over. You see, her family, the very people who were supposed to love and protect her, were actually the ones who had been abusing her, which is her godmother's husband, Sal, since she was just a toddler. Talk about a family from hell. After enduring years of neglect from her own mother, Katie 𝐉𝐻𝐈's situation took a dramatic turn for the worse when she was forced to live with Linda 𝐉𝐻𝐈 and her husband Sal. But this domestic arrangement was no Brady Bunch-style utopia. Oh no, this was far worse than anything you could imagine. You see, poor Katie was subjected to the most unspeakable acts at the hands of Sal 𝐉𝐻𝐈. We're talking about consistent sexual, physical, emotional, and verbal abuse. It's enough to make your blood boil. According to ABC News, Katie herself described the horrors she faced at the hands of her abusers. And let us tell you, her words are not for the faint of heart.
Well, from the time that I was 2 years old, I was sexually abused by my godmother's husband. I was pretty much her slave.
But despite all that she went through, Katie is a true survivor who has emerged stronger than ever. We can all learn a thing or two from her incredible resilience and determination to never give up. It's a sad reality that in some environments, negativity can fester and grow like a malignant tumor. And in the case of Katie 𝐉𝐻𝐈 and her brother John, this negative atmosphere was the perfect breeding ground for a predator like John Esposito, to thrive.
I really didn't have any friends my own age. I think in my childhood, the thing that probably made me the happiest was when I got to spend time with John. I would say I loved him. He was always a confidant, somebody that I would trust.
Esposito was a family friend who lurked on the periphery of the children's lives, showering them with attention and gifts. But it was all a facade, a twisted ploy to get closer to them. Soon enough, Esposito started subjecting poor John to his twisted abuse. It's a heartbreaking and disturbing situation that no child should ever have to endure. And the sad truth is that it all could have been prevented if the sexually abusive atmosphere in which the children were living had been addressed and corrected. It's a sobering reminder of how important it is to create safe and positive environments for our children and be vigilant in protecting them from those who would harm them. In 1978, Esposito pleaded guilty to attempting to kidnap a 7-year-old boy from a shopping mall. But get this, he somehow managed to avoid prison time. How the heck does that even happen? But here's the real kicker. Despite Esposito's shady past, Beers' family had no idea what kind of monster he really was. It's almost like they were living in some kind of alternate universe where abuse was just swept under the rug and never talked about. As Katie Beers later revealed, she grew up in a world where abuse was all too common, but nobody wanted to talk about it. The community turned a blind eye, ignored the signs, and didn't know where to report it, even when they suspected something was happening. It's a sad reminder that sometimes the world can be a dark and scary place. But suppose there's any silver lining to this story. In that case, it's that by shining a light on these atrocities, we can hopefully prevent them from happening to other innocent children in the future. However, it turns out that Katie Beers' abusive childhood, which should have broken her spirit, instead gave her the mental fortitude she needed to survive an even more terrifying ordeal. It's December 28, 1992, and Katie Beers is just 2 days away from celebrating her 10th birthday. John Esposito, a family friend who has already shown himself to be a total creep, offers to take her on a birthday shopping trip. But instead of hitting up the mall, he takes her back to his house. Now, normally a birthday surprise like this might sound fun and exciting, but trust us when we say that this is anything but. Esposito's family home is located on Saxon Avenue in Bayshore, a seemingly normal middle-class hamlet on Long Island. But for Katie Beers, it would become a living nightmare. Little did she know that she was about to be trapped underground, in a tiny dungeon of a room with no windows or natural light, for the next 17 days. And to make matters even worse, she was about to learn that the real monsters weren't just the ones lurking in the shadows. They were the people she thought she could trust the most. As if trapping a young girl in an underground dungeon wasn't enough, this guy had some seriously disturbing hobbies on the side. You see, Esposito was a building contractor, which in itself isn't all that interesting, but what he did with his skills is enough to give you chills. He built his own apartment over the garage, just a few yards from the main house. That sounds like a sweet setup, right? Well, hold your horses, because it gets way creepier. Esposito apparently had a thing for playing Big Brother to young boys in the area, luring them in with promises of fun weekends, hanging out in his fancy garage. And get this, he even put up posters in local stores to advertise himself as a mentor to these impressionable young lads. But here's the real kicker. Esposito's own family pretty much left him to his own devices, with intercoms set up throughout the house so he could communicate with them from his self-built bachelor pad. We can only imagine what kind of twisted shenanigans were going on in that place. It looks like Esposito's family may not have been as clueless as we thought. According to the LA Times, Esposito's fraternal twin said they never had a reason to go back there. Suspicious much? But here's the point. Little did anyone know, Esposito had been busy building a secret underground dungeon just beneath his garage. That's right, a subterranean tunnel that led to a concrete hellhole where he would later imprison poor little Katie Beers.
Big John was probably the last person that I could have imagined having ever hurt me in such a way.
So Katie Beers goes over to Esposito's garage apartment, innocently playing video games in the dude's bedroom. But then things take a dark turn when Esposito decides to make some seriously unwanted advances on the poor girl. And when she refuses, he straight up kidnaps her. But get this, Esposito had been planning this heinous crime for a while. He had built a secret bunker hidden behind a 200-pound concrete trap door, just waiting for the right moment to strike. And to top it all off, he even had disguised the entrance with a removable bookcase in his office. Talk about a creepy, villainous lair straight out of a movie. After being lured into a video game trap Poor Katie 𝐉𝐻𝐈 was taken captive by the slimy predator, John Esposito, and thrown into a dungeon underneath his garage.
He picked me up and carried me into the closet, where I realized he was opening up a door to expose a tunnel.
This wasn't just any ordinary dungeon. No, this one had been designed specifically to hold Katie captive, with a soundproof room the size of a coffin and a CCTV system set up to monitor her every move. For a whopping 17 days, Katie was trapped in this 6x7 foot underground bunker, living in a space that would make a prison cell look like a 5-star hotel. But hold on to your hats, because it gets even worse. The bunker had a toilet. Yep, you read that right. So if you're keeping score at home, this means that this hellish prison had everything you needed to survive, except for basic human decency. Oh, and as if things couldn't get any more twisted, Katie even remembered playing in the dirt of the freshly dug bunker a few years prior. Well, it looks like Mr. Esposito was quite the twisted mastermind. After imprisoning young Katie 𝐉𝐻𝐈 for 17 long days in his underground dungeon, he still had the audacity to come up with an explanation for her sudden disappearance. According to 𝐉𝐻𝐈's memoir, Buried Memories, Esposito forced her to record a message on tape claiming that she was kidnapped by a man with a knife. In the message, Katie can be heard saying, "Aunt Linda, a man kidnapped me and has a knife. And oh no, here he comes right now." Seems like Esposito was quite the director, and poor Katie was forced to play along with his twisted game. Can you imagine being stuck in a concrete bunker for 17 days with your kidnapper forcing you to record a fake message for your family? It's like something straight out of a horror movie. After holding Katie 𝐉𝐻𝐈 captive in his concrete bunker, John Esposito decided to cover his tracks with an elaborate plan straight out of a crime movie, forcing 𝐉𝐻𝐈 to record a fake message claiming that a man with a knife had kidnapped her. Esposito then took the recording to a nearby arcade and played it over the phone, pretending to be panicked and claiming he had lost 𝐉𝐻𝐈 inside. Talk about a villainous performance. It's like Esposito was trying to win an award for Best Deceptive Kidnapper. Unfortunately for him, his evil plot was about to unravel. For 16 long, grueling days, John Esposito took Katie 𝐉𝐻𝐈 on a one-way trip to Terror Town. How, you might ask? By descending into a creepy, dark tunnel and subjecting her to unspeakable abuse. And if that's not enough to send shivers down your spine, hold on tight. During these traumatic moments, Esposito lets poor Katie into a slightly larger part of the bunker, but don't get too excited, because he always returns her to her coffin-sized cell before skipping town. During his frequent visits to Katie's cell, Esposito would shower her with gifts fit for a princess. Blankets? Check. Toys? Double check. Junk food and soda? You betcha. And if that wasn't enough, he even let her watch TV. The only catch:
I was able to have the TV on 24/7. It was on the news that I saw that the police had figured out where the call had come from. They knew that it was pre-recorded.
Those reports became her lifeline, her beacon of hope in an otherwise nightmarish situation. With each passing day, she clung to the hope that she would be rescued, that she would be freed from her captivity.
When I saw Marilyn on the news, I think I cried a lot, because I could see in her eyes that she had missed me and that she wanted me to be found. That gave me some relief and some hope.
She had squirreled away a key to her lock and chains, and was able to access the larger part of the bunker in Esposito's absence. Now, as if being held captive wasn't bad enough, 𝐉𝐻𝐈 was also worried that Esposito would try to pull some shady business while she was asleep. So what did she do? She stayed awake most of the time. Talk about dedication, am I right? Then one day, Esposito wanted to take a picture of 𝐉𝐻𝐈 with her eyes closed, as if she were dead. But 𝐉𝐻𝐈 wasn't having any of that. She knew that if the photo got out, the search for her would come to an end. So she put her foot down and refused to play along.
Let's make police believe that you're dead. Play dead, I'll take a picture of you. Once police see that, they'll give up on you. And Katie, the bright little girl, wise little girl that she was, knew that that could be her death sentence. And she refused to play dead and let him take a picture of her.
From that point on, I rarely slept, and I also did not eat any of the food that he could have altered, because I was fearful that he might put something in the food, a sedative, a sleeping pill, something, so that way he was able to get the photo that he wanted, so the police would stop looking for me.
Esposito, the villain of our story, had the gall to tell little 𝐉𝐻𝐈𝐍 that he intended to keep her in this bunker for the rest of her life.
How I was going to go to school, what I was going to do to survive. I wanted to get married and have kids. And he would always have witty remarks right away, like, oh, you'll have kids with me, you'll marry me, you'll do this with me. So I would always tell him, no, I don't want to do that.
I was disgusted. I was 10 years old. I was trying to get him to think about the long term of him kidnapping me.
𝐉𝐻𝐈𝐍's shrewd questioning had the desired effect and made Esposito second-guess his own twisted plots. The little girl had him so worried that he even started to think the police might be on his trail. When Katie vanished into thin air, the cops had their suspicions about a certain shady character named Esposito. Why, you ask? Well, let's just say he had a bit of a questionable history and happened to live nearby. But that's not all. The police also discovered that a phone call from Esposito, supposedly made during Katie's disappearance, was nothing but a sneaky little recording. How devious. But that's not all, my friends. Witnesses saw Esposito arrive at the scene all by his lonesome on the very day that Katie went missing. Coincidence? I think not. Under constant surveillance, Esposito began to buckle under the intense pressure. Finally, on January 13, 1993, he broke down and confessed via his attorney, leading officers straight to 𝐉𝐻𝐈𝐍's underground lair. She had been trapped under the earth for a grueling 17 days. But justice was not yet served. Esposito was slapped with a guilty plea for kidnapping on June 16, 1994 and was sentenced to 15 years to life in prison. However, the charges didn't stop there. 10 other pending charges, including sexual abuse and endangering the life of a child, were dropped in exchange for his plea. But the story doesn't end there. Sal 𝐉𝐻𝐈𝐍 also faced the consequences of his heinous crimes. He was convicted of sexually abusing 𝐉𝐻𝐈𝐍 prior to her kidnapping and served 12 years behind bars. In the end, justice prevailed, and the perpetrators were held accountable for their unforgivable actions. Katie was immediately taken away to a place called East Hampton, where she was placed with a loving foster family. Finally, Katie was free from the clutches of the evil that had haunted her for so long. With her new family by her side, Katie could start a new chapter in her life filled with hope, love, and joy. As she grew older, she realized that the best way to defeat those torments that imprisoned her was to face them head-on. So she decided to co-author her memoir, reliving the horrors of her captivity. But Katie didn't stop there. She became an inspiration to many by sharing her story with others. She became a speaker, encouraging people to never give up in the face of adversity. With her sword of courage, she empowered others to fight their own battles.
They've shaped me to who I am, but they don't define me.
Now Katie lives in rural Pennsylvania, where she enjoys the company of her loving husband and 2 children. She spends her days spreading positivity and love, making the world a better place, one smile at a time. As for John Esposito, who had held her captive, justice finally caught up with him. On September 4, 2013, he was found dead in his prison cell. It seemed that even the universe couldn't bear the weight of his wickedness any longer. And so Katie's story continues. She is a reminder that even in the darkest of times, there is always a glimmer of hope. With the strength of her spirit, she reminds us that we can conquer anything we set our minds to.